Hello, and welcome back to the sim. In this one, we're here on the ramp, loading up the cargo in the PMDG 737. And in this one, before we get out of here, we're going to go ahead and set up the Saitek or Logitech Multi Panel to work with the MCP. So let's go ahead, jump in the cockpit, and get started. The MCP, or the Mode Control Panel, is the autopilot controller inside of the Microsoft Flight Sim 737 by PMDG. Now, this guy has a whole bunch more buttons than we have on our multi-panel. But that's okay, we're going to map as much as we can to get the most functionality and operation out of our device. First, you needed to have enabled the SDK, right, because it's got to broadcast that data back, and you had to have enabled it in SPAD.next to support the PMDG. There is a video in the series, linked here, where you can see how to do that if you haven't already done it. Second, if you're new to SPAD.next, there's a Getting Started user series which includes what to do with Saitek Logitech panels if you're just getting started. Watch that, linked here, because you need to remove the Logitech software so that the two devices aren't fighting with one another. Or software aren't fighting with one another, because SPAD will take full control of it. Okay, so jumping into SPAD.next. So you're going to see that I am running 09.12.37. I am on the alpha. I do that because there's a lot of things I need. To get on the alpha, you have to change things in your settings and restart. So under settings, under application settings, under expert, you have an update channel, you change it to alpha, and you close and restart SPAD.next. Now, to run the alpha, you have to be in the Discord, because you have to link your Discord account to it so that it will allow you to run the alpha. You have to agree to the fact that, hey, things could go wrong, and I understand that. Meaning, don't complain if things break or if it can't run. And number 3, it's also very important that you are in the Discord, because you might get the SSL TLS issue, in which case you have to go to the news section of the Discord, because there is a link to download an updater. When we do have our devices and we come in, we've got our Saitek Multi Panel. You make sure that the Saitek Multi Panel support is enabled. Sometimes, depends on the different model, you have to enable skip every second click. So mine's an older unit, and it seems like it sends dual clicks, so this is set to on, and the tuner pull rate is set to 0. Also, you'll notice in my application settings, I have virtual power support disabled, because I don't like virtual power, and I don't like having to set it up for all of my devices to come on or come off. So sometimes if you have no text on your display, it's probably because this is enabled, and then when you come here, it means you need to add conditions as to when it turns on and off based on the power. And because I don't run it, I don't add conditions. So for those of you that just want to get the snippet and get it installed, so after you've set up PMDG interface, after you've removed all of your Saitek Logitech software, simply click on a display or a knob or a button, anything, go to online snippets, and what you're going to want to do is uncheck only for this aircraft. You're going to want to make sure with the multi-panel you select complete device, and if you just type in PMDG 737, you're going to find there's been a few published items through the years. You could also just search for me. You're looking for the Microsoft Flight Sim PMDG 737 Multi Panel by me. And the reason for turning off only for current aircraft, I publish this for all because there are all the different liveries, and I didn't want to have to load every single possible livery up. So look for it that way. You'll get it. You click OK. And when it asks to replace all events, you say yes. It'll replace all your events, and as you can see now, mine's got all the exact same stuff. All right, so with that, let's now jump into how to configure it for all those who want to learn how to configure it themselves. Getting started with the control panel and setting it up. So we're going to go ahead and we'll bring the real one in as well. So on the display, when I click on the display, this will give me the ability to add events and what the display data is following. And it's linked as well to the selector. So if I change the selector to VS, you'll see that deselects from the display. I click on it again, and now you can see that I'm looking at my VS settings. So this is linked to all of this. So we're going to go back to altitude, and we're going to look at altitude first. So here, what you can see is that display PMDG glare shield mode control panel. So what did we do? Well, we went to add event, and we have our items that we can add. Display value. So this is going to be what the display shows you. You cannot change the words like Alt VS. Those are hard-coded inside of the Saitek or Logitech panel. Whatever the selector is set to, it defines what the text on the left is going to be. The only thing we can do is pick where the data is coming from that's going to update the right side. So that's our display value. So we clicked on that, and it pops up, says, okay, we're going to change the target display of altitude, and we're going to get that data from, so I highlighted NGXU, I typed in MCP, and what you'll see when we expand this is we have all of our MCP data. And so we went with glare shield mode control panel altitude, and I can see the value is currently 10,000. So we did that, and if you want to always have a minimum number of digits, you can set the format here as to what you want. So if you always wanted to have 5 digits show up, you can do that. I've left it blank, and it does everything on its own. Next up, I wanted to add what happens when the tuner moves clockwise or the tuner moves counterclockwise. So the example was clockwise. We added an action. We sent simulation event, highlighted the PMDG again. I typed in MCP to make my life easier. And then I looked for the altitude selector. So any of the knobs are selectors. And then we pick from the event system in the same way that I would interact. So to turn the value up, I would use the mouse wheel up event. And then we clicked OK. Of course, I don't need that again, so we'll just delete that. And then for the counterclockwise, we used the same event, but we did a mouse wheel down, so it automatically adds the correct value. I then I did a copy, all events. I moved the selector to the VS position. I clicked here. I then pasted all, because this was blank, and then I edited by double-clicking, clicking here, and so I moved it down from the mode control panel altitude. I came down and selected the glare shield vertical speed. We then changed from the altitude selector to the VS selector, and again from the altitude selector to the VS selector. So again, these were simply, since it was copy and paste, altitude selector is up here. I scrolled down, I found VS selector. Nice and easy. Now, what you're going to notice, though, is I reversed the values for the VS. And that's because the way the wheel works, a mouse wheel up is a down event to pitch the nose down, and the mouse wheel the mouse wheel down is the up event, or to pitch the nose up. And so if I was using the pitch trim to run my vertical speed wheel, which I've done in the past, for me, because I have pitch somewhere else, I would have those mapped correctly because they would then match. But it's a little bit weird when you're used to turning a knob clockwise and counterclockwise to increment and decrement values. So I flipped it for VS. Next up, we used one of the features of the display mode. So I added an event, a display mode event, and we set the condition that if vertical speed is equal to minus 16,960, then we will turn the display off. And that's because that's what PMDG, when VS mode is off and the VS window is blank, that's what they set that value to. Then we added another event, so another display mode event, and this one was anytime the value is greater than minus 16,900, we're going to go ahead and set the VS config to on. And so now the display, see, it says right now it's off. And so if we quickly jump back into here, you could see that the VS is off. And so if we turn on VS mode, instantly the value comes on. And so what happened here is now as we change our VS speed, of course it changes in the sim as well, changes on our panel. But if we disable VS mode, right, it turns off. So that works great. However, you'll notice in our case, we're not displaying 4 digits all the time. So to fix that, before we publish this, we're going to come in here and we're going to take that value and we're going to make sure to put 4 digits so that it always displays 4 digits minimum. So now we match. Excellent. And if we turn it off again, of course, it goes out. And the display tells you that currently that display is set to off. I then copied from altitude again. So I came back to altitude and I copied all events. We then changed to speed. We clicked on it. And we pasted all events. We then changed the glare shield from altitude to IAS mock, and we set a format of 3 digits because it always shows 3 digits. Also, you can't go below 100 in the PMDG 737 anyway. We set up the selector to use the speed selector instead of altitude selector, and we kept it with mouse up and mouse down events in the positive and negative order. We also used the exact same type of event of display mode, and we added that glare shield mode control panel IAS blank equals 1. So when you go into VNAV mode, it blanks out this display because speed is managed by the FMS. And so this will turn to a 1 when it blanks out. So when that value equals 1, we'll turn the display off. And when the value is a 0, we will turn the display on. Same thing, move the selector to heading mode, come in here, and we change the value to panel heading. We kept 3 digits for the format. That way it displays 060, for example. We changed the events on the clockwise and counterclockwise to heading selector for both. Finally, we came to the course menu and we set up the course for a 0. And again, same thing, we're using course 0, meaning the left side course value. Course 1 would be the right side value. And again, format of 3 zeros. And then we have the course selector left, core selector left events, and the mouse wheel up and mouse wheel down assigned to those. Now, I in the past have added events for having this tell us what it's in. So if you wanted to make it do an audible call out, you could do that by adding scripted events. Device selector equals 1, add action, speak text, I usually tell it to stop all others. I don't know that that actually works though. And we're going to click OK.
Alt mode.
And we're going to copy this event. We're going to paste it. And we're going to do a V space S space so that it will say VS. Hit test.
VS mode. Alt mode.
So,
VS mode. Alt mode.
There you go. You've got it so that when you turn the knob,
VS mode.
it will tell you
Alt mode.
what mode you're in. You may like that. You may not like that. Feel free to delete these things from the snippet if you don't like that. And add more if you want additional ones as well. Now that we're done with our display, we're going to move on to the buttons, and the buttons work in a similar method as we've done with all of our other switches and events. Basically, we added an event. I did button lights first, so what turns the light on and off. And again, we looked for the condition. This was a lot easier. We used the NGXU, right? And we went to the glare shield. We went to mode control panel. We went to annunciators. So annunciators are LED, and so we came to the Command A, and we chose Command A as the variable. So when it's equal to 0, we added an action and button light mode, and then we chose that that would set that button to off. And then we clicked OK, and then what I did was I did a copy this event, I did a paste, I then took this, double-clicked on this, changed it to a 1, and then changed that from an off to on. Short mode on permanent, so it lights up and stays lit and doesn't flash. So that's how I did those first two events. So now let's delete those. And then I added a button pressed short, so less than a second. It will register that way if you chose to add for yourself a button press long for, say, turning on the Command B switch, maybe. So when we added a short mode, we clicked on Add Action, we did a Send Simulation event, we went to the NGXU, we typed in MCP, and then I looked for the Command A switch. And the same way I would interact with it in the sim, which is to click the button with a left mouse button, that was the event that we chose. And so as you can see, that's what showed up as the parameter. So now that I did that, I did a copy, all events. I came to heading, I pasted it, and then just like we did every other time, we came in here, just stretch it out so we see it. We came in and we double-clicked on each item, and I changed this from Command A to heading Select Annunciator. Then we did the same thing for that one, and then with the command switch, we changed it from the Command A switch to the heading Select switch with a left mouse button press. On the NAV button, we copied and pasted, and we replaced it with the LNAV events and the LNAV switch. For IAS, I chose, since there's speed and level change, I went with flight level change. So I tied the button light to level change, and I tied the short press to the level change switch, and I put the long press on the speed intervene switch. For altitude, copied, pasted from the IAS, we changed them to Alt Hold for the LEDs, and short press went to the Alt Hold switch, and we put the long press on the altitude intervene switch. VS, Copy, pasted, changed the annunciator to the VS annunciator, and we changed the switch to the VS switch. Copy, paste for approach, changed to the approach annunciators, approach switch. And then I chose for reverser, since I won't do a back course, I just won't. Also, VOR loc, you could have mapped it to VOR loc if you wanted that button. I find VNAV is way more important in what I will use physical day-to-day, so I wanted VNAV mode. So I put VNAV 0 and 1, and then the VNAV switch. Auto throttle, so again, we used the send simulation event, right? Send simulation event. We grab the event MCP arm switch, and in the on position, you need to use off. And in the switch off position, you need to use the switch 1. So they're just reversed. Same thing with the flight directors. They seem to be reversed as well. For the flaps up, I chose to put the disengage bar on the flaps because it's the paddle. It's kind of in that area, and it works. And then I did elevator trim up and down here. Now, usually for myself, I would have mapped this to the VS wheel so that it had a wheel in kind of the same place. But this is more generic for other people, so I left it as pitch trim. Now, one thing to note is you will see that the altitude display lags behind the MCP. But if you watch the magenta altitude selector in the PFD, so if we scroll in on it, just so it's nice and big, you're actually going to see those change at exactly the same time. So this is something to do with the PMDG and its values. So if we keep that display still in view so that we've got it, good enough, right? So you're going to see that, yes, in the sim, the MCP changes faster, but it takes a moment for the PFD to even update. So now you know. That's what that is. Now, when we go
mode.
to VS mode, right, and we enable VS mode, you could see that that value is updating much faster. So speed, the speed value is updating instantly. Heading also updates instantly, so we see our heading bug move and then our course value as well. So all that's working. Of course, we've got our autopilot command A. We've got our heading. So we can select and deselect heading. We can turn off our nav mode. So nav mode was armed. So when we do that, of course, we've got our LNAV mode armed, waiting for its information, of course. So all those are working. We've got our disengage bar. That's all working. We've got our auto throttle. And then we've got our pitch trim. That's going to do it for this one. As we're getting ready, we're loaded up. We're going to get rid of our pallet loader, send it packing, get that door closed, and get this baby fired up and into the air. Hit that like, subscribe if you haven't, come along with us next time. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.